Okay, this is November 13th, 2021 here in Kitchener, Ontario, Zone 5. And in this video we'll talk about, I don't know, various things, fall cleanup. Right now we're looking at my driveway and this huge collection of leaves. You can see these, there's a difference in these leaves. There's some yellow ones and then there's some more of these kind of brown-orange ones. The brown and orange ones I've collected from the backyard. Those are from my sugar maple. These yellow ones are from my Norway maple in the front yard. And so as we pan down the driveway here, you can see I've got a lot of these yellow leaves collected. These there's also some hosta leaves in here. So I've collected a lot of these yellow Norway maple leaves from the Norway maple in the boulevard and my Norway maple in my front yard. And these Norways take a long time to drop their leaves, so they're generally the last to drop the leaves, and they always go this total gold, yellow gold color, not much orange in it, not much red. And I haven't collected any leaves out of my front yard, so it's completely I've taken a little bit off this section here by the driveway. I was out here yesterday and I've completely cleared the boulevard. Let's just take a moment to talk about what I've done here. So the city has recently done, this is all new street. They're still doing construction way up the top of the street there, but they've put in these new boulevards. They've resodded it, and I cut a section out. I cut this section out around this tree, and I cut another section out around the utility pole. And so I've got this filled with, there's some hostas, there's some sedums, black-eyed Susans. I've done a bit of shaping here. I've given it a little bit of a curve so that this section by the sidewalk is wider and the section by the curb is a little narrower, the section of planted bed versus the grass. And so that means that the grass is wider at the curb and narrower at the sidewalk, and that's just so people can walk. You know, they can get out of their cars, and then there's a longer surface to be able to park the car and get your door where you can step out, and then by the sidewalk you don't need that, and it's nicer to have more garden for people to look at as they walk by. And then just looking into my yard here, so you can see there's just a ton of leaves that I need to collect. And a lot of people, they just put it to the curb. The city will come and collect those. So most people do that. They just rake everything to the street, and eventually the city will just come by and scoop that all up. But I like to try and process it with the mower to generate this fine mulch. So I've already done this once before. I had my driveway totally full with material, and I processed it all down, and I was able to generate, I don't know, like an inch or two of mulch, of fine leaf mulch to do these beds. And so I'm going to keep processing all of this material here, and I should really do it today. It says it's going to rain a little bit maybe, but I should really try and get through all this material today. It's going to be a couple hours of work, actually. This is just it's a ton of work, and I'll say it's better to go in small batches. So it's not a good idea, and I always screw this up. It's not a good idea to try and do the entire thing and get the entire thing shredded down to size. It all just ends up mixing with each other, and it becomes a real nightmare to work with. So it's better to just kind of separate out a small section like this, get it fully ground, clear that out, pull out a little bit more material. I talked earlier about, the yellow leaves are from the Norway maple, the brown leaves are from the sugar maple, and there's also all this green stuff and some sticks. That is from my buckthorn hedge at the back, which I've taken down, and I've started to work through pulling the small material off that. And I think this material is small, these little small twigs, that's maybe up to, little less than a centimeter. That's about a centimeter in diameter, and I think the mower can handle that without taking serious damage. So I think I can get through this material with the mower. If we look in these bins here, this bin contains probably about a month and a half ago, I did a batch with the mower, and this is very well composted and processed now. So that's one. I've got a bin of kind of ready to go compost there. I'm going to use that to top up these beds. You can see the soil level has gone down. Maybe it's hard to estimate the camera. It's hard to read from the camera. I can tell you that that's about 3 inches of drop. So lots of room to backfill these containers. Anyway, as we go into now the backyard, I've got this. This I did, maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And, more leaves have fallen in here. I don't like these full-size leaves in my nice, beautiful, fine material. But this was a couple of weeks ago. I've got, so this is the same material that was out that we saw that I had mulched the boulevard with. And so I have some more material here, and I'm going to use that, elsewhere. I've just retained a little bit, but I'm going to be able to make a lot more, as you've seen. I've got all this mess here. This all needs to also, either go under the mower or get composted somehow. I have 2 beds like this, full of hostas. Right, so this is full of hostas here. They've pretty much given up. You can just easily just pull the leaves loose. This is my second hosta bed. You can see I've almost completely cleared it. This was completely clear yesterday. More leaves have fallen on it. But I raked it down to the soil. And what I'll do is I use these sections. I end up with a ton of that shredded material at the end of the season. And I will just completely cover these with that shredded material. This is a place to park that shredded material. And in the spring, I can just come back in and collect it and use it as compost or to mulch other beds or I can just leave it on here on these hosta beds. But generally I find I don't have space to dump all the material that I generate in the fall. So I use these beds to park it, and then in the spring I need that material elsewhere, so I just recollect it from these beds. My sugar maple, I've mentioned a couple times, is completely bare now, but in the background there you can see there's another Norway maple, and it's just barely starting to drop. Most of its leaves are still green, and that's kind of the maybe the biggest tree in the neighborhood. My neighbors have a large silver maple. It's also pretty gigantic. It's completely bare now. I normally don't get much leaves from that, but my sugar maple and that Norway maple in the back there really dump a ton. So I've almost, I've cleared this whole section of the sugar maple leaves. There's not much left to collect from the sugar maple other than this hosta section, which I haven't got to. There's not much left from the sugar maple, but I know that Norway maple is going to start dumping on me pretty soon. If we go back into this section, so this periwinkle section, this whole, all up to the fence and kind of coming out in a ring here around the base of the tree, is all periwinkle, and I find I could just leave those leaves sitting on it, and come spring, this periwinkle is like the ultimate digester. It just, whatever you throw on it, just ultimately gets absorbed into the periwinkle. I'm using this section as kind of a junky discard area for now. I'm going to, at some point, do a better job of, before the snow comes, I'll just organize all these cages, get them a little more tidy, maybe get them into the shed. It would be better to have them in the shed than out here in the weather. Here is a bunch of material that I don't think can go through the mower. Too thick for the mower, but I think my neighbor has a bit of a chipper shredder that will handle some of that material. Again, coming through this section, you can see I haven't cleared very much. I haven't cleared the leaves off of this because this is all, back there you can see more periwinkle. There's some ivy in there, some of this Baltic ivy. And this whole section is actually ferns. The ferns are all faded now, but you can see some leftover, fronds, these brown dead fronds from the ferns. This whole section is full of ferns. And again, if I just leave these leaves on the ground, they won't hurt anything here. They won't smother. So I don't need to clean this up too thoroughly. I do like to get all the leaves off this flagstone section and try and get the leaves out of this kind of bed in the middle here. This is all just, you can see the difference between the areas where I've cleared and the areas where I just haven't got to. And then I've got this huge brush pile here. This is all the buckthorn hedge that was pulled down, and I got to be careful reaching in here. This the buckthorn is named, and I'll see if I can show you. So here's an older bit of growth. You can see there's a bit of a, if the camera would focus, there's a bit of a thorny tip there. Right there is a bit of a thorn, and the younger tips are even worse than that. And so working with this material is quite treacherous. You got to get the gloves on, and you never know. You know, if you try and reach in here and just grab a bunch of this material, you're sure to get stabbed. And they're quite. This thorns are quite vicious. Anyway, it's just there's just tons and tons of material here to get through. And this is smothering whatever's underneath it, so I need to work with that kind of soon. I've got this little section of lawn here. I've been trying to keep the leaves off it to try and not let it die. I was a little bit abusive with this sod. It was originally in the front yard. I pulled it up, I moved it around. So some of it's not doing so well. There's some of these brown gaps in here. But for being somewhat abused, I think this sod looks okay. I think this section of lawn looks okay. Over here, I think with these two, I've got these artichoke plants in containers. I think I'm going to try and overwinter these ones in the shed. So I think I'm just going to stick them, you know, behind that door and see whether they survive the winter. I know these hostas will, so I've got all these hosta containers here. Some of them look like they've got nothing in them. The hostas have all died back, and I've mulched them over with my my beautiful shredded leaf product. So I just mulch that, right? It's the soil level's about an inch deep. That's where the hosta crowns are, and then I just fill the rest with these shredded leaves, and these will all also go in the shed. So all these clay, these ceramic containers of hostas, and in this case I've also got some ajuga growing in there, chocolate chip ajuga. These will all go behind the door in the shed there. And so I just groomed this yesterday, and you can see there's a crater there, and that's because the chipmunks love to get in here and cause a big problem, make a big mess. And so there's a couple of these little tiny ajuga plants that keep getting uprooted when the chipmunks come in and squirrels come in and try and bury things in that mulch. And actually I had these were all a big mess this morning as well, and you can see the squirrels kick the material out of the container as they make their mess. Coming back through this section, there's a lot of plants that I just it's been so warm, I'm really behind on dealing with stuff. Ordinarily the weather would have forced my hand, you know, a month ago, and I would have had to do something with all these plants, but I've just been lazy and not really done anything with them. So I've got a bunch of, these are just rhubarb containers back here. There's a couple, that's a sage, there's lovage, there's some thyme in that container, there's another sage here. So these things need to be dealt with. Finally, we've had a couple freezing nights. It's a little bit warmer now, but we're starting to get we had a couple freezing nights a couple days ago, and so this bean has died. And I don't know if, you know, that looks pretty dead, and it doesn't feel like there's any beans in it. I don't know if there's anything here really to recover. Actually, let's break that open and just see. What have we got? Those don't look mature and viable. I don't know what's going on with this bean. This is my first time growing it. I enjoyed the scarlet runner bean. I enjoyed seeing all the hummingbirds that the red flowers brought. So I'm definitely going to grow this again. But I didn't get much of I didn't really know what to do with the harvest, so I didn't do much with it. Coming back here, it's just again more mess that needs to be cleaned up. So anyway, maybe we'll just end this one here. Soil pile in the back, hedge all cut down. let's just end this one here. November 13th, 2021. See you in the next one.